Cool. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's installment of ClueCon Weekly, sponsored by SignalWire. This time with us we have Dan Jenkins, founder of Nimble Ape and organizer of Commcon, a great conference in Europe. And it's going to be, is it going to be on again? By the way, that's the first question I want to ask you. But first of all, if you'd like to introduce you.
Thanks. The answer to that is I don't know yet. There will definitely be another one at some point. Whether or not there's a virtual one this year, I haven't made up my mind. If it does happen, it definitely won't be happening at the normal time of June, July. We'd probably do it later on in the year, and try end up competing with ClueCon, Astricon, all of the other ones. OpenSIPs is later on in the year as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Works like as I'll talk about in a bit. Like the consulting business of Nimble Ape has been super busy, and so ultimately, paying work usually comes first, right?
Fantastic. Yeah, of course. So for the five people that don't know, Dan has been a member of the WebRTC community for a very long time. And I think today we're going to talk about his latest endeavor, which you can see in the slides up top. So I'll let him take the stage.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess for the five people that don't know me, no, there'll be a lot more people that don't know me, but yeah. So I'm Dan. I run Nimble Ape Ltd, and in the UK we're an RTC consultancy, and yeah, we've been crazy busy during the pandemic, even more so as we've been coming out of the pandemic. Like not that it's over yet, but you'd think that all of this stuff, like in terms of consultancy and everything, would be really busy at the beginning, and then it slowly died down as vaccines and everything come out. But we've carried on being busy, and I think that's the same across everyone that I talk to. Suddenly people are like cluing up on remote working and everything else. And yeah, we run an event called Commcon in the UK. Just happens to be in the UK in the past, but we were actually, just before the pandemic hit, we were actually looking at running a US version. So hopefully we can get back on that once everyone can start attending things in person again. And yeah, spoken at a lot of events, etc. But yeah, no. Today I wanted to talk about Broadcaster, and like what's happening with that, and I know like Lorenzo's talked about it in the on a ClueCon, like a proper ClueCon session.
Yep.
So he's talked about like the tech behind it, and I just kind of wanted to do a quick here's where we are, why haven't we launched yet kind of session. So Broadcaster, how did it all begin, and what is it? So like I said, ClueCon Commcon virtual last year was really how it all got started. You can see in the picture here, this is a browser on my TV in my office, and you can see like on that tripod there's a camera that's pointing at me, and a mic and everything, and this is the output of vMix, doing WebRTC output. And so you can see there Lorenzo's up in the top right, I'm in the top left, his slides were in the bottom left, and then the guy in the bottom right is the AV guy from PSP who've looked after us for the past two Commcons. But so this looks kind of good, right? Like we were fully remote. We were in the middle of a pandemic, where we really didn't know what was going on, and we hadn't really decided to do a Commcon virtual until about 4 weeks beforehand. Like it was a big rush, but we wanted to do it, and we made it happen. But what you can't see is the fact that if you look really carefully, you can see that the bottom left of where it's Lorenzo's slides, it's actually another browser, and we're actually using Jitsi. And that's because vMix at the time didn't allow you to do multiple streams. So you could have a video and an audio session, but you couldn't bring in a screen share. The APIs weren't in there. Like it's not about not having multiple streams. It was just the vMix web application didn't support screen shares. So we wanted to be able to bring in the slides. In the end, we tried not to use them from this recording. We actually tried to just use them the PDF exports, etc., because they're much better quality. But the recording was used to keep all the slides in the right place and at the right timings. But you can see, like, we ended up kind of mishmashing lots of different things. So, like, at the time, we were like, this is a pain. And then, as the pandemic went on, this is a show on the BBC. I think this is Mock the Week, and they had a virtual audience. And you can see there, that's the Zoom UI. And if you follow me on Twitter at all, for the past year, I've complained heavily about, like you can see there, one of two. So there are actually more people in the virtual audience. But the BBC just put this UI up on screen, like didn't try and like cover up the fact that they were using Zoom at all, etc., etc. And I think I've got a picture. Yeah, you can see they've all been told to put Dot as their username on Zoom, so that their name wasn't on TV. But Veronica there and Jeff didn't get the memo. So their names were plastered all over national TV.
Yeah, plus it's really not professional. I mean, it really looks like you're just...
It looks terrible. Absolutely terrible, right? Why would you put this on your show? Like, ultimately, like, this was actually not at the height, like, at the very beginning. This was actually, like, I think, like, August, September time, something like that. Like, we were months in, right? So, and then, so, like, all year I've been like, oh, Zoom on the TV and MS Teams and whatever else. And then I started getting more and more into, surely we can do something about this. And I joined a couple of NDI and SRT groups on Facebook. I'll explain what NDI and SRT is in a bit. But
what's happening here?
So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 laptops. And you can see they're all using Zoom. And what this is they're bringing in panelists or viewers as remote participants into like an AV thing. I don't think this was live TV. I think this was like an event. But essentially what they're doing here is they're capturing the screen of Zoom on these 11 laptops and then outputting them as NDI and then putting them into a video mixer, so that they can then like put that group of people into like this virtual audience. And I was like, why in this day and age are we why are we putting 11? Why are we buying 11 laptops in the first place?
Yeah,
just to be able to screen capture, right? So all of this got me really like enraged.
So why did they have 11 laptops?
Pardon, sorry.
Why did they have so many machines? Are they each one of them a different audience?
Each one's a slightly different audience, I think, and like Zoom, you don't want a screen full of like tiny people.
Oh
right?
yeah.
So they spread them out. Like you'd think maybe they'd just put a big monitor up, right? And you'd put Zoom into this big monitor, so you could have like 50 people, but they'd still be decent size. But then you have to like start like slicing that actual video and saying, right, we've got 50 people in here, but so that's 10 by 5, let's say, and then you start slicing the video so that you can like grab an individual person out, and it just gets really, really messy, because as soon as someone disconnects because they've got a connectivity problem, your whole slicing has gone to crap, because the image moves around, right? Because Zoom isn't designed for broadcast, it's designed for meetings. So yeah, no, this is like a complete and utter, like, they wanted to get something going, right? But I've seen so many pictures of exactly this. And like this is actually not the worst one. I've seen one with 20 laptops, and the laptops have been MacBook Pros. So just imagine spending the better part of what, 40 grand just on MacBook Pros, just to be able to do screen sharing, basically. So yeah, all of this got me really like enraged, and I was like, what can we do about it all? Like, because WebRTC is this fantastic technology that's in billions of devices around the world, whether or not that's on your iPhone that's in front of you, whether or not that's on your Android, whether or not it's on your tablet, or just on Chrome OS on a Chrome OS, or a laptop or whatever. So like WebRTC is this amazing technology, and we don't need to install an app, we don't need to install Zoom, we don't need to install GoToMeeting. Like, it just works, right? Theoretically.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we all know that there's like annoying little bugs here and there every once in a while. Like, I was joining this and Luca couldn't hear me. And I just changed my mic and changed it back, and Luca could hear me, which is really frustrating. But that's the same for things like Zoom and MS Teams. So, Broadcaster. How does Broadcaster work? So this is where we get into NDI. So we started I started talking more to the AV team during Commcon virtual, and they said, oh, NDI output from something like Jitsi Me would be phenomenal, right?
Mm.
And NDI, so NDI stands for Network Device. I can't remember what NDI stands for. Let me look that up.
What is it,
very
more
quick.
importantly?
Yeah, so what is it? So it's a NDI stands for Network Device Interface, which I always say sounds like really, really generic, right? But ultimately, it's this way of transmitting video across a network, and that's all it does. So it's not open source, but it's like freely licensable. And so you can download the NDI SDK, you can shove video into it at pure resolution, HDR, everything, and you can send it over the network, and then a video mixer that knows how to decode NDI can take it in and put it straight into a video mixer. So this is really, really important for like AV teams, broadcasters, etc. It's a standard
Is it
that is used everywhere.
is it a standard? Is it a proprietary format?
So it is proprietary to NewTek, the company that made it. But because it's been this accepted standard within the video industry that everyone pretty much like implements it. So you can get cameras that output NDI straight onto a network. So you can get a camera, you can plug a network cable into it, and then it will output NDI straight onto your network, and then you can pick it up using a video mixer, whether or not that's software based like vMix or one of the other ones, or into hardware type stuff. But so yeah, it's proprietary, but it's freely usable. Yeah, I shouldn't say freely. There is a license, and you do have to pay for certain things. Like if you distribute the SDK itself, you should pay a license to NewTek. But if you don't actually distribute the SDK, then it's freely licensable. So that's NDI. There's another one called SRT. Yeah, SRT. And that's similar. Like NDI is like designed for over a local network, and so you can unicast or you can multicast NDI across your network, but it's not designed for the WAN. Whereas SRT is designed for the WAN, and so you can connect up a mixing desk or whatever to an SRT feed up in the cloud somewhere, and then you can get this real time stream, and it fixes the issues that we have with NAT, etc. Like that we have with like other technologies like RTSP, etc.
Does it mandate a specific codec or set of codecs?
So NDI has its own codec within it. So it kind of translates it. SRT, I'm not too sure about, to be perfectly honest. I haven't looked too far into SRT myself because SRT inherently has like delay within it, whereas NDI is extremely close to real time because it's all within your local network. So yeah, back to the AV team, and they were like, oh yeah, if we could get an NDI feed out of for every like an individual NDI feed for individual participants in a Jitsi call, for example, that would be fantastic, because then we could just have a video meeting, right? And like we could all talk to one another. So that was one of the problems with vMix actually that I forgot to mention earlier. I'd be talking to Lorenzo, but because the vMix was doing the mixing, vMix was acting as an MCU. So like all of our video and audio was going to somewhere in the UK and being mixed and being sent back. And because we were all getting individual feeds, there was inherently like this half a second delay. And we all know from talking to one another on like MCUs that are struggling, etc. Like that's actually really difficult to be able to talk to one another, because inherently you like end up talking over one another and going, oh sorry, like you go, no you go, no, okay, I'll shut up, you go. And that's essentially what happens when you've got too much delay. So what the AV team was saying were basically, well, if we can use an SFU, then that means that we're not in the mixing in order for people to have this conversation. Like imagine a panel on a virtual conference, right? You want the panel to be able to talk to one another really, really easily, and we just want to get like individual NDI streams out so that we can mix it into an end result. The mixing shouldn't be part of the actual conversation. So that's kind of how we got on into like NDI and then WebRTC and joining those two things together. So we did actually look at whether or not we could make like a Jitsi like desktop app that output NDI for each person, and in the end we decided against it. But like MS Teams outputs NDI now, but MS Teams outputs an individual video feed for everyone, but one audio feed for everyone. So so if someone's talking like when they shouldn't be, you get one mixed audio stream, and so it's useless basically. Zoom is meant to be coming out with NDI integration sometime soon, but ultimately all of these platforms are designed for meetings and they're not really designed for broadcast, and there's a load of stuff that we can do to help broadcast, and that's kind of why we kept on going with Broadcaster, even though MS Teams came out with NDI and Zoom said they were going to do it. There's loads of pros to actually writing something designed for exactly this. So I mentioned earlier Lorenzo was on ClueCon back when was ClueCon? February.
Yep.
Yeah. So Lorenzo was on in February talking about their NDI plugin for Janus, and Broadcaster is built entirely on Janus. So we worked on this plugin with me, Echo, and helped kind of shape it. So it's very much a joint venture in that regard. So there's the URL to the video that Lorenzo's in. And ultimately, we built Broadcaster on the top of another platform, so that we didn't have to deal with, running a load of servers to just do signaling and store data. I tell my clients all the time, use a platform until it becomes painful, and I always what does painful mean? Painful means like feature set, like when you hit a feature that the platform doesn't support. Or, and this is most common, or it hurts financially, because like you've got so good at what you're doing, and that you're ending up spending a load of money with a provider. So we actually use Firebase for all of our magic as such. that links everything together and makes everything happen. Because Firebase is an awesome platform, and it does a load of clever stuff itself. Why should I build all of that again and host it myself and everything else? Just let Google and Firebase deal with all of that themselves. So how does it actually work, right? So I was talking about an SFU earlier and with Jitsi. So this is similar. Because we're using Janus, that's inherently an SFU for video and audio in the mode that we're running in. And so you can bring in your participants from all across the globe, and it doesn't matter where. And it might be that, like, so the darker red dot over the UK is a media server. And it happens to be where our Firebase stuff is all hosted as well. All of our Firebase stuff is hosted in the UK rather than in many different places, and that just makes it easier from a legal perspective as well. So you can have your participants all over the world, and all of these lighter red dots, like lighter pinkish red dots, are browsers, right? It's just a web application that people go and join, and ultimately this is the UK, and you can see all of those feeds coming into the UK, and then I've got this extra feed. Now, I don't live up there. I live just below the darker dot, just below and just to the right. And so they were really close together, and so I moved it. So I don't live up there. I think that's like Birmingham-ish. I'm not very good with my geography when there's no lines on the map.
So.
Yeah,
Is that Manchester? No.
Birmingham/Manchester, let's say. So that dot is the person mixing the event, and so they run a Docker image inside of their local network, and we make this really easy. You sign up, and you get given an API key, and when you run the Docker container, we give you exactly the command to run. The hardest thing is actually running the Docker container, right? Getting Docker installed in the right way, etc. And so we give you exactly the command to run with the API key, and you give we call it a broadcaster connector. And so you give the connector a name, and so in my case it's Dan's connector. And so within the UI you can see that connector, which is quite cool, and then you can see all the traffic that's going to it, and you can actually find local NDI feeds within your network, and you can make them participants in your session, so that like you don't have to like make fake webcams. If you wanted to like send back like 5 individual mixed streams for each person, you can just add them as NDI feeds into using the connector in it, and it kind of works in the opposite direction as well, which is pretty cool. But all of that traffic's coming into this media server that's in London, and then the connector just joins that session as like this invisible ghost thing, and it just receives a WebRTC stream for each individual person. And because Broadcaster's built for broadcasters, right? Like it's built for the needs of AV people. There aren't any limits on like, you know how you go into Zoom or whatever and you can only share your screen once. You don't have that limitation within Broadcaster, because ultimately we don't care. You can add like, if you had 5 webcams pointed at you in from 5 different angles, you can add those 5 webcams all at the same time. And you can, if you wanted to share 5 different applications but not a whole window, you can do that as well, as long as you've got the bandwidth to be able to support it and the CPU to be able to support it on your machine. Then Broadcaster deals with it all for you, and so each one of those feeds gets sent off to the person in Manchester, in this case, Manchester, Birmingham, whatever it is. And then it ends up going into their video mixer, and then they get individual streams for each person. And this is kind of how it ends up looking. So the design has changed quite a bit. This is from a talk that I gave in March, can't remember, FOSDEM I think it was. And so the top two windows, one of those is an external participant, and one of those is a like internal participant, the actual video mixer person. And so you can see on the left, you've got on the left one, you've got bottom left. That's my camera as a video person, and then you've got you've got a screen share, and then you've got another camera. It would be helpful if that other camera wasn't like the same camera, but I think it was very late when I was doing it. So you can see the two participants, the two screens, and then on the browser on the right, you can see that I'm sharing my webcam in the bottom right, and I'm also screen sharing. And so you can, and then the bottom window is OBS, which is a open source video mixing thing that was extremely popular before the pandemic, but it's become even more popular now.
Yeah, I've used that too. Does it support NDI?
So it does support NDI. You have to install an NDI plugin, but it does support NDI. It also, like, if you install the right stuff, it can support SRT and broadcasting to good friends of mine are Millicast, and so Millicast have their own, which is like a WebRTC CDN basically, and so you can download a Millicast OBS version, and so you can output this, like the output that's there, you can then output it straight to a WebRTC CDN if you wanted to. So Millicast is really, really cool. So yeah, all of those pictures inside of OBS are separate NDI sources, and you can just about see, you can just about see there NDI source 3, NDI source 2, and NDI source. And so imagine having your 5 people in a panel and having them all pre-laid out, and actually being able to bring them all in individually. And so you can see each one is its own video and each one has its own audio. The audio comes through as stereo, so that if you've got a stereo mic, then you get the goodness of all of that. And ultimately, the NDI part is kind of really boring, because it's just a thing, right? It already existed, and it's all of these other clever people that put it into OBS, etc., that make all of this possible. But ultimately, the broadcaster bit that is really interesting is the fact that we're able to have this session, this meeting as such, and be able to output each individual one onto a local area network as an NDI feed that you can bring in, and you can composite, and you can add effects to, and you can set out all of your layouts, and you can move between your layouts, and we don't have to have, like, if we go back to this, imagine if that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 5, so that's 25 people. Imagine if those were actually 25 NDI streams.
Oh yeah.
And then they were able to composite them properly, etc. You wouldn't have all of these stupid little, like, oh, I'm muted, I'm mute icons, and all of this, what we call Chrome of the Zoom UI. Like, the BBC shouldn't have been doing it anyway. Ultimately, they shouldn't be advertising another company in that way, but they did. So yeah, that's kind of what Broadcaster is. And it kind of sounds really simple, right? But actually getting good quality video from a video conferencing service that isn't a video conferencing service into a local area network and making it consumable is actually quite magical. But because Broadcaster isn't a meeting place, we're able to do loads of cool stuff, right? So in the future, it's not something that we support right now because Janus doesn't support it. But there's something called Red Audio, and it's about redundancy audio. And so you can send like twice the number of audio packets, and essentially, because you're sending more data, right? But ultimately, because you're sending more packets, if a couple get dropped, you don't hear it because you've sent this redundancy. And so ultimately, Chrome supports Red Audio. It's a mode for Opus. And the Jitsi team have done a load of tests with it, etc. It's really quite a cool thing, but like it would never get implemented into like Zoom or MS Teams, right? Because if you lose a bit of audio in a meeting, it's not the end of the world, is it? You just go, oh, can you say that again? I missed that. But if you're live on TV or you're live doing a virtual talk to 1,000 people in a venue in Dubai, because Dubai's opening up. I don't know if Dubai's opening up, but like I'm remote, and there's 1,000 people who have paid good money to hear Dan Jenkins talk. Why would you pay good money to hear Dan Jenkins talk? But you want that really good audio, and so Red Audio is not something that we support right now, but it's absolutely something that we could support like really quite easily. Whether or not that's paying for the development of Red Audio within Janus and then implementing it. But then things that we do now are like prioritizing audio, sorry. So if we know that a connection's really kind of dropping off the cliff because of the WebRTC statistics that we've got access to, we can say, right, like we really care about audio. We don't care so much about video. Like body language, like David Duffett did a really great talk at Commcon Virtual last year, and it was all about body language and over virtual. It was a lot more than that, but this is the bit that really sticks in my head. And like that, body language is so important in making a connection with someone. And so we want video, right? I'm in the middle of my picture, middle of my frame here. You can see what's behind me. Hopefully you can't see how much of a mess my office is at the moment. And you can see that I like Lego, and I've got a SimCon award and whatever else. And I'm moving my hands, and this makes that connection, that bond between me, the speaker, and the audience. But if I just turned off, can I just stop my video? I can just stop my video. So if I just turn that off and I carry on talking, and I keep saying how like amazing broadcaster is and how great body language is, but you don't really need it, right? Because you can still hear me and I'm still talking to you, and you can still hear the message. And so when you hear people, when you see an interview on like BBC News in the morning or whatever your local news is, and there's an MP, member of parliament, and they're in their country house with terrible broadband, right? And like occasion, like they'll get terrible bandwidth all of a sudden, and they'll drop off. Why do they drop off, right? Because like we can just kill the video, we can save all the bandwidth that the video was using, and we can make it usable still just by having audio. So that's something that we're doing today. Something that we actually want to make better is something like what happens in SignalWire, where it changes your video to a picture. And at the moment that's something that we don't do because the NDI feed is built entirely from the WebRTC stream. So we actually need to do a bit of work there to say, right, let's uncouple that so that we can
hide it and put something in front.
Shove in a still picture, and then when the video comes back, take that still picture away and re-add in the video. So that's something that we want to do.
It's kind of what you do on SFU in general. Like an MCU is able to put in a picture automatically. On an SFU, usually doing it on the client side.
Exactly. So at the moment, we build everything off of the WebRTC stream. And so if video disappears from that stream, then it's just a blank. It's just no video. It would only end up being audio, which is fine, right? It's better than nothing. But yeah, we want to get to a point where it's even more customizable. So yeah, what's next? So we've been in open beta since late December. I think we launched it like just before Christmas, and basically I launched it and said, have at it, try and break it, to a load of people within like the NDI scene especially, and let me know. And I was like, I over ramped the servers that we were running on, because I didn't want I didn't want someone emailing me going, oh, it's really like it's not working. So I think like I got a 16 core box off of Amazon, put one in America, put one in the UK, and just let it run. And we got so much great feedback from it. It was really, really good. But we're now 5 months later, and where is it? We're still probably 2 or 3 weeks out, which kind of hurts to say, because I was really hoping to, at the beginning, I was really hoping to have something by the end of February. And then I was really hoping to have something by the end of April.
We know how that works.
Yeah. But like I say, like the consulting business has been super busy, and ultimately existing clients come first, right? So so this has kind of been pushed back and back. But Nimble Ape recently hired our first proper developer. So he's been working on that while I've been getting on and doing consulting work, which is great. So I think we're probably 2 or 3 weeks out. But I can't wait for that. I mean, anyone that's gone and built something like this will speak to you. Like someone that's gone and built something like in a weekend, right? And gone, oh, this is really cool. And then someone goes, oh yeah, I'd pay for that. And then you start looking at like integrating subscriptions and billing and making sure that you're billing someone properly, right? Correctly, and like then like if you're offering different plans, which we are going to do, like you then have to limit down the feature set within the UI and everything, so that someone can't do what they're not meant to do. And all of this is actually really quite a lot of work. And I think I had like I've built so many things like this in the past, but they've always been they've been like properly organized things, right? Where someone's paying me to do it, and so we have a proper plan, and there's usually a team of people building it. And I'd like stupidly put into my head, oh yeah, this isn't a lot of work, right? And it turns out it actually is. So something that people have been asking me since the beginning, and something I haven't made public yet, is how much it's all going to cost. Yeah. So post beta pricing will end up being a per seat thing, and so there'll be 3 plans. Haven't decided on the names of those plans yet, but for a per seat pricing, we're looking at 50, 100, 150 pounds, which some people might look at and go, oh, that's quite expensive. Or some people might look at it and go, oh, that's really cheap. And it's really just like, what does it do for you, right? And so if you think back to that picture of the laptops, how much did they spend on all of those laptops? And then how much like time are they then spending setting all of that up to make it right? And so ultimately 50 quid a month, 100 quid a month, 150 quid a month for the different packages at different qualities and what's included and the amount of bandwidth that's included isn't actually a lot of money. So I think that's a good, I always wanted to make it accessible to say podcasters that wanted to do like a video cast type thing. I wanted it to kind of still be accessible to people that are just kind of doing that kind of stuff, but I also wanted it to be accessible / not too cheap for the people that are going to go out and spend their money and make money by using this. So that's what we're thinking at the moment. I'd be really interested to hear from people whether or not they think that's too much money, or too little money. I've put a lot of feelers out there, and that's kind of the ballpark, let's say. Something I haven't talked about is how, like, because we built it in such a modular way, there's absolutely no reason that client A, who is like super super techie, and B, they really care about media quality, and they've already got their private like routes between their video hub, their video mixing hub, and like where they're getting the video from in the first place. Like in my head, I've got Formula One in my head, because all the streams from Formula One go over their partner private network, right, to all of the broadcasters. And so there's no reason why you can't go and run one of these media servers within your own network as well, if you're so inclined, which means you've got greater control over the media, and it's not necessarily going over the public internet. We've actually had quite a few people interested in this. I won't say the use cases, but yeah, imagine multiple things, multiple inputs from different places within a location, and then and you want really small latency, like super small latency, and so you run your media server within that network, and so the only thing that's touching the public internet would be the signaling to be able to make it all happen. So that's something that we haven't priced up yet, but we have been thinking about how to make that work, and it would have actually worked. It would work extremely well. And I think this is my final point. Quite a few people have asked me about it being open source. Dan, you're an open source person. You love open source. Why are you making a platform instead of just kind of giving it away? Well, I'm building upon the plugin from the Meet Echo team, and quite rightly, the Meet Echo team decided that, 99% of people that are going to use the NDI plugin from Meet Echo are going to be people within like the broadcasting industry, the video industry. And so essentially, the Meet Echo team have already given the world Janus. Why should they give the world / people that are actually really making money from this stuff? Because this world, I don't think people realize just how much these companies spend on gear and everything. Like, there is money in this industry. And so I think the Meet Echo team quite rightly said, well, we want a slice of that. So even if I made Broadcaster open source, the actual plugin wouldn't be open source, and so it would kind of be null and void. But ultimately, yes, I do an awful lot of stuff within the open source community. But ultimately, you can't just give everything away, right?
Yeah, we know that.
People need to make money. People, and actually, a lot of the time, people won't actually use open source because they don't trust it, because they're not paying money for it. So I think ultimately, there's always going to be like virtual conferences or just bringing in remote attendees into a real conference, a real in-person conference, and if ultimately, if that conference is there for the open source community, then I'd more than happily just give someone access to Broadcaster, right? But ultimately, we shouldn't be ashamed of making money, right? We you do it in the right way, and everything's good. And if someone really wanted to go and build something themselves, then they could go contact Meet Echo and build something themselves. If you're interested and you saw it and going, this could really do something for me, this could solve a problem for me or whatever, then get in contact. Broadcaster at nimble.a.pe. Broadcaster at nimbleape.com probably works as well. I just wanted to come on and have a chat with Luca, and because I hadn't been on ClueCon Weekly in what feels like forever, and give everyone a bit of an update. So that's my update. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks we'll be doing a soft launch, not publicizing it too much, but doing a soft launch and see what breaks, and see what people think.
Cool. So that's very, very interesting. It's based in a few almost standards that I have never heard about much, honestly. I think NDI looks like it's one of those things that everybody in a certain industry knows about and nobody else does.
Yes, that's exactly it.
How widespread is usage in general? Like, do all TV stations use NDI more or less?
So I'm not sure about like hardcore broadcasters like TV stations. Like a lot of a lot of hardcore places still use SDI, which is like actual cables, right? Um, but from what I understand, more and more are moving towards NDI because it simplifies everything. Like instead of having to actually have dedicated cables for dealing with SDI, you can just have a network. And so you can get like SDI to NDI converters and stuff like that. So you don't have to like throw away kit that doesn't support NDI. So within actual broadcasters, I'm not 100% certain. Within AV companies, like that are doing events slash like anything not too hardcore, then they are all pretty much using NDI now because it simplifies everything. And there's something called Dante as well. Dante is essentially NDI but for audio only, and so it's licensed very very differently to NDI. But again, people don't want to have to like cable up a building for SDI or whatever other means there is for connecting devices. They just want a network. And so if you can send everything over the network, then that's far easier. And then because of dark fiber and connections between buildings that are miles slash kilometers, hundreds of kilometers apart from one another, network just makes everything far easier.
Oh, that was, I mean, that's something we never talked about before. It's very interesting. It's a kind of usage for WebRTC that ultimately uses WebRTC to ingest into a broadcasting network. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so I guess just before we go, there's actually a really interesting proposal from the Millicast team called something called WIP. I think it's called WIP still. But it's basically WebRTC ingest over HTTP. And so anyone that's set up a WebRTC session knows like the complexity there is between setting up things. Like you have to create your offer and then you have to create your answer and then send it back and make all of that happen within the right period of time in the right order. And so getting like WebRTC ingest into like a server ultimately ends up like historically needed like a WebSocket, right? Because you needed to send your offer and get back your answer and like a load of complexities in like ICE candidates and everything else. WIP kind of simplifies all of that and makes it so that you can send up your offer, you can then get your response back as your answer, I think. And because so much is already like it's a constrained WebRTC ingest, right? Like you have to know what the server's capable of, and you have to know what the client's capable of, like before you do anything. And so it doesn't work in real life for connecting browser up to browser because like iOS supports H.264, now supports VP8, doesn't support VP9, etc., etc., etc. So you kind of already have to know a load of information to make WIP work. But I can't remember what WIP stands for. WebRTC HTTP Ingest Protocol. I think that's about right. Yes, so it's becoming like ultimately WebRTC is becoming this more and more kind of I don't want to say flexible because it's always been flexible, but more and more industries are starting to go, oh, what's this thing? And ultimately that's because of billions of devices just being able to already do WebRTC, right? You don't have to download an app, it just works.
Cool. So, well, there was a lot in there. I think it's a very, very interesting technology, and it's really new. It's different than what we used to. It's got parts that are open source, but are not. That kind of format, like NDI, is always weird because it's open source, but it's not. Like the standard is available, but then it's hard to use it. So yeah, probably using a solution like Broadcaster is probably the best way to go about it.
Right, right, exactly. Like without like the Meet Echo team actually being able to do it, like WebRTC to NDI, without that plugin, I'd I wouldn't have a clue, right? I've learned everything from them and working with them on it. So no, you really have to understand video, and you really have to understand the very very low stuff that most people shouldn't have to care about, right? And that's where Broadcaster really does come in.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Dan. It's been great to go over first, the future of Commcon and the various conferences in the space. And I sure hope I can get to come to one in UK finally. I had to miss the previous editions for work reasons, both of them. So I was hoping I could join the next, but things happen. And especially about Broadcaster, which is a very interesting piece of technology. Go check it out, and let's chat about NDI one time because it feels like could be a good addition to our broadcasting suite too. And well, thank you for joining us, Dan Jenkins, founder of Nimble Ape and founder of Broadcaster.
Thank you.